The last scion of old Essos knelt upon the terrace balcony of his father's fire-wrought palace and let the dawn wash him in gold. Aegon of House Targaryen, third-born though first in hungering restlessness, felt the heat of the 14 flames rumble through the basalt beneath his bare feet. Every morning since childhood he had climbed the tower of the Oracle's Arch, hoping that one dawn in 1,000 might reveal some whisper of destiny beyond the Ruby Sea. Yet Valyria still stood, unconquered and unconquerable, its 7-tiered walls stretching from one horizon to the other, like a dragon Ouroboros consuming the world. Below, the city glimmered. Thousands of slender roads set with red glass, aqueducts coiling overhead, iron zeppelins tethered to sky piers, and everywhere the shadows of dragons on the wing. Even at sunrise, Valyria thronged. Red priests chanting odes to Balerion of the Deep, alchemists selling wildfire crystals, freedmen from Nagai hawking eel noodles. The doom, that disaster the dreamers once feared, had never come. The isles had not cracked. The earth had not wept flame. The dragon lords are all. And so Aegon remained a prince of nothing new, heir to nothing more than perfection already achieved. It gnawed at him the way a restless drake gnawed the bars of a too small muse. He turned from the sunrise and gazed across the 20-mile expanse of the Eldritch Quarter. His father's citadel, Tessaracon, the 40-fanged crown, stood taller than any spire in Valyria, save the Temple of Torches. On a day like this, with the winds hot and salt heavy, one could almost forget the world beyond, the Summer Isles, the Jogos Ni Plains, and believe Valyria the sum of every dream worth dreaming. But Aegon had tasted the unknown. He had stolen away to Lys under guise of a trade envoy, and drunk orange liqueur, with sailors who swore the Sunset Kingdoms brimmed with forests older than dragons. He had flown Vagar over the smoking grasslands of Sathorios, and seen ruins swallowed by green cathedrals. He had walked the Broken Arm and watched Rhoynar merchant ships unload coiled carpets the size of leviathans. With every mile he traveled, the Empire's perfection seemed smaller, its complacencies louder. A screech ripped the sultry air. Vagar came barreling out of a cloud, bronze scales flashing, wings beating thunder. The she-dragon overshot the tower, circled once, and landed upon a molten iron perch, folding pinioned wings with imperial disdain. Aegon stroked the hot hide along the ridge of her neck. A year ago, he would have mounted and soared, but this morning the dragon's presence felt less like freedom than accusation. Here's your power. Why squander it on dawn watching? Footsteps. His sister wives emerged from the spiral stair in gowns of black lace. Visenya's eyes, chips of purple ice, took in her brother's brooding. Rhaenys, ever softer, ever singing, paused to kiss his cheek glowing warm from the wind. You stand sentinel, Visenya said, as though the barbarians of Westeros might surge across the sea at any moment. They are not barbarians. He tried and failed to keep reproach from his voice. Nor are they ours. Nor need they ever be, said Rhaenys. She swept an arm over the horizon. We possess all the wonders men have names for. Visenya tilted her head. And yet Aegon's dreams show him empty thrones across the water. He is half in love with a continent he has never seen. Aegon exhaled. I dream of meaning, he said. Of worthy enemies. Of building something new. Here we are gardeners pruning roses already in bloom. Den? Ender. Visenya touched the scar beneath his jaw, earned in a spar with a Volantine oathbreaker. It is not only roses we tend, little brother. Our fleets hold the jade gates. Our dragons guard the free cities. Our laws chain mage and merchant alike. Valyria's order keeps the world from chaos. Age is order, he answered, but it is not life. Rhaenys's laughter tinkled like wind chimes. I would share your wanderlust if our empire were less comfortable. But have you visited the menagerie of glowing mirrors? The library where the scrolls sing? Nine. Aegon smiled despite himself. He had, of course. Valyria was endless delights. But wonder, like wine, dulled once drunk too often. Another sound rose. Horns. The dawn trumpets, announcing the conclave of the 32 flames. Today, the Dragon Lords gathered to renew the covenant of mastery, binding each house's talons away from each other's throats for another generation. Every 30 years they made this vow, and every vow felt hollower to Aegon, a ritual of peace that strangled purpose itself. Visenya stepped to the balcony edge. Come. What? If we miss the opening rites, Father will send the Black Guard. End. But Aegon remained rooted, eyes locked west. Go. Tell him I prayed too long at the oracle. Rhaenys frowned. The oracle speaks only in silence. Then silence is what I seek. He turned from them, striding toward the flight bridge that arched between tower and dragon roost. Vhagar's head snaked after him, nostrils steaming. Visenya called. Brother, one day Father will ask you to swear fealty to the covenant as heir. If you mean to refuse, decide before that day. Now. Her words followed him down the bridge, but Aegon answered with the dragon's saddling word. Sovit dai cha. Obedience. Vhagar lowered her shoulder. He swung up, leather straps hot beneath his palms. With a scream, the dragon flung herself skyward, scaling coals trailing from her maw. Wind battered Aegon's face. The city shrank to jewelry beneath them. He aimed her west, always west, toward the green gulf where Rhoynar ships speckled the blue. Hours later, after skimming whitecaps and scattering gulls, he landed upon Dragonstone, the lonely fortress isle his ancestor Aerion had claimed generations before as a distant watchpost. In the true timeline, Valyria's doom would someday force the survivors here. But the doom had never come, and Dragonstone served now only as a quaint reminder that horizons existed. Its black galleries echoed emptier than a tomb. Aegon dismounted, letting Vhagar glide to the dormant volcano's lip. Inside the great hall, dust sheets ghosted over tables. He pushed open a window of fused sand and breathed brine. Here for once Valyria felt far away. He imagined Westerosi sails cresting the sunrise, strange banners, stags, lions, deerwolves, snapping in salt wind. He imagined offering them a goblet and asking what songs they sang, what gods they feared. The thought quickened his pulse. A rustle. From the stair emerged Orys Waters, Aegon's boyhood shadow. Bastard half-brother, born of a Lysine courtesan and their father's bored charity. His pale hair and strong jaw mirrored Aegon's own, but his eyes were sky blue, not Valyrian purple. Your sisters send me. Orys tossed a satchel upon the hearth. Father demands you return by moonrise for the oath. Oaths, oaths, Aegon muttered. Always to preserve what is, never to dare what might be. He uncorked a skin of wine and offered it. Orys drank, wiped his mouth. The conclave keeps us from war. It keeps us from greatness. Aegon paced. What is the point of dragons, if not to carve new legends? Orys leaned on a pillar. Says the prince who has every luxury. Luxury is rot, Aegon said. Give me cold winds, uncertain ground. Let me win what I have rather than inherit what I do not need. Orys's smile was rueful. You speak as though you envy me my bastard freedoms. In a way I do. You can choose your life. I am chosen by convention. Silence stretched. Beyond the windows, waves beat stone. Orys spoke softly. If you long for conquest, the sunset lands remain unconquered. But you know Father will forbid any war across the narrow sea. He calls Westeros a bog of churlish gods. And so it is, Aegon said. Which is why it should belong to us instead of chaos. He planted both hands on the table. I will ask the conclave for leave to cross. 100 ships, 3 dragons, a token force. I will promise riches, vassal thrones, tribute. Then? Orys laughed. They will laugh louder. Why would the Dragon Lords risk even one child of the flame when Valyria already rules the known world? Aegon's jaw tightened. Then, I will not ask. A hush. Orys stepped closer. Aegon, you speak treason. A treason of vision. The bastard glanced at the dragon perched above the rookery. One does not steal a dragon flight without the city noticing. Not steal, Aegon said. Depart, Tight. Quietly, by night. Vagar, Meraxes, and Regal. Visenya and Rhaenys, if they come of their own will. Oris rubbed his temples. Your sisters love you but love Valyria more. Aegon opened his satchel, withdrew a rolled vellum. A sketched map of Westeros compiled from traders' tales. I have studied their kingdoms. The north is vast but sparse, ruled from Winterfell by Starks. The Reach is fertile, the Stormlands fierce, the Iron Islands raiders. If dragons appear above their castles, they will bend the knee, or burn. Our task is swift. Once 7 kings bend, we return east with more tribute than the 14 flames yield in a decade. Then the conclave cannot condemn success. Benderol. It is madness. Is it? Aegon tapped the map. In Valyria, I am a spare prince. In Westeros, I can forge a dynasty that will outlive empires. A realm not of dragon lords but of mixed blood. Valyrian fire and Westerosi steel. A new harmony. Oris stared at him long. Finally he said, if you fall, father will name me traitor's blood. But if you rise, perhaps a bastard may become something more. He extended a hand. Aegon clasped it. Ride with me, Aegon said. He returned by moonrise as commanded, but not to offer obedience. The conclave gathered in the amphitheater of embers, 32 thrones of obsidian surrounding a floor of molten glass that pulsed like a living heart. Each lord wore a torque of fused rubies, each lady a crown of wyvern bone. In the highest seat rested Araxes Targaryen, Aegon's father, ruling Archon of the 5th Dominion. A thin man whose power lay in unanimity, he never moved without the conclave's shadow at his back. Aegon entered in plain riding leathers, sword at hip, dragon-hide boots, ash-smudged. Murmurs rippled. Visenya sat rigid. Rhaenys bit her lip. Araxes spoke. Son, we honor the covenant tonight. Do you kneel and bind yourself to its everlasting peace? Then? Aegon stepped onto the molten glass dais. The heat seared his soles through leather. He felt as though standing upon the heart of the world. Father, lords, ladies, I shall kneel to no peace that chains valor. I offer instead a pledge. Grant me leave to sail west, 3 dragons strong, and I will carve for Valyria a new jewel. 7 kingdoms rich in gold and grain, bent beneath our wings. All tribute shall flow here, and I shall return within 4 years to swear the covenant anew. Nemtau. Silence crashed like a hammer. Then laughter. Skeptical, nervous. A matron of House Belares rose. Westeros is an unwashed isle. What tribute could equal the mines of the golden fields? Aegon met her eyes. Their rivers hide gold, their mountains silver, their forests hardwoods tall enough to build sky arcs. One realm might be meager. 7 combined are bounty. A lord in purple scowled. Aegon seeks a private kingdom. Why should Valyria sanction his vanity? Bemder. Another. If conquest were profitable, we would have done it centuries ago. Aegon's voice cut the din. Centuries ago, we hungered. Now we are sated. But sated things grow sluggish, and sluggish empires die. Araxes lifted a hand. Enough. The hall fell still. My son, your fire honors our blood. Yet duty reigns. Our fleets secure the world from Yeti to Volantis. Our dragons keep the peace. I shall not squander them on far dreams. Aegon bowed his head. Then forgive me. For what? For leaving without leave. Gasps. Daughter. Araxes half rose. Aegon drew his sword, laid it across both palms as an offering. This is Blackfire, forged from Valyrian steel. I return it to you as symbol, my birthright left behind. I depart as exile, not prince. I claim nothing but my life, and those who follow willingly. Visenya stood, dark eyes blazing. Aegon? Rhaenys' voice cracked like a lyre string. Brother, do not do this. But he pivoted and strode up the aisle. 2 Kingsguard blocked him with spears. He stared them down. Stand aside, or be the first to feel exile's bite. They hesitated. Araxes barked. Let him pass. He chooses outlawry. Then so. Aegon walked from the hall, past stone dragons whose flames had long cooled. Atop the sky pier, Vigar waited. He leapt into the saddle, and with one word, "Bugga, fly," she launched. From other towers, 2 more shapes rose, Meraxes with Visenya astride, and Rhaegal bearing Rhaenys. Their wings beat in unison, thunder over the capital. Aegon's sisters flanked him amid the clouds. Visenya shouted over wind, "Exile alone is madness. Exile together is fate." Rhaenys' tears streamed, but her smile blazed. "We could not let you steal all the songs." Below, bells rang in alarm, but the dragons were already westbound, midnight embers fading to star-specked dark. Months of sea and sky passed, islands dwindling astern. They wintered upon Loreth, forging spears and sails. They courted Myrish cartographers and seized maps of Westerosi coasts. At last they stood aboard the flagship Wind Singer, crimson sails snapping. Orys commanded a fleet of 12 tall ships. Volantine veterans crewed the decks. Sellsword captains followed for promise of dragon-forged plunder. The first landfall came at Crackclaw Point, a finger of marsh and pine. Villagers fled the sight of 3 dragons. Aegon claimed no pillage. He ordered wells cleaned, left silver in payment. Word would travel swifter than fear. Dragon lords who paid and protected. Next they flew to the mouth of the Blackwater River where rising hills cradled a promontory. A perfect site for fortress and harbor. Aegon named it Aegon Fort, drove wooden pails, raised banners of red and black. It was not yet King's Landing, but the seed stirred. Envoys arrived within weeks. Lord Darklyn of Duskendale, curious. Lord Massey, wary. Others too proud to come in person sent spies. Aegon welcomed all with open tent flaps, offering wine and glimpses of Vagar's talons. He asked only fealty and trade. He promised justice and autonomy. Some scoffed. Darklyn bent first, kneeling upon river sand. Massey followed. They spoke of the Storm King Argilac, who ruled the eastern shores and would not submit. Aegon listened. He sent ravens to Highgarden and Casterly Rock, messages sealed with Valyrian glyphs. "I come for unity, not ruin. Kneel and share prosperity. Stand and taste fire." Argilac the Arrogant replied with a box of severed hands. Messengers mutilated. Aegon burned the box, but not the hands. He hung them from poles before his camp. Storm season broke, lashing the coast. Aegon marched south regardless, 5,000 men at heel. At the fields of the Wendwater, the Stormlanders met them, banners whipping, stags crowned with lightning. Aegon rode Vagar low, her shadow engulfing the army. He spoke once through a horn. "Kneel." The answer was a flight of arrows. Vagar bathed them in blue-white flame. Argilac died sword raised, beard aflame. The conquest rolled. Orys claimed Storm's End, marrying Argilac's daughter, making of bastardy a foundation for a new Baratheon line. Visenya swept to Blackhaven, Rhaenys to Stony Sept. Everywhere dragons cast new laws and dragonfire. Yet the deeper challenge awaited. The kings of the Rock and the Reach. House Lannister's golden hosts and House Gardener's field legions joined upon the wide plains of the Reach, 200,000 spears glittering under midsummer's sun. Against them, Aegon mustered barely 40,000. Dragons alone were edge enough. He met his sisters above the clouds at dawn. Visenya's armor shimmered darkly. Rhaenys' braid snapped like a whip in wind. They clasped wrists. For Valyria, for Westeros, for tomorrow. The dragons descended. Fury followed. Merax's roar shook hearts from ribcages. Rhaegal's talons sheared siege towers. Vigar unleashed a storm whose heat fused sand to glass. From the maelstrom rose a column of gray fire that consumed Gardener and Lannister alike. The Field of Glass. When the smoke cleared, the last king of the Reach lay melted within golden armor. The lions broke, the roses withered. Highgarden opened its gates. Casterly Rock surrendered after one glance at molten shields displayed upon poles. Aegon accepted oaths, forgave survivors, bound lord to lord under a single crown of black steel freshly quenched in the Glassfield sands. Yet one kingdom remained, the North, winter-bound and proud. Lord Torrhen Stark marched south with bannermen, who feared no dragon. Aegon crossed the Trident to meet them. Snowflakes danced, though autumn lingered. Vagar hovered, torches guttered. In the night, Torrhen came alone into Aegon's camp. They met by a riverstone hearth. The Stark laid Longclaw upon the table between them, a symbol that both might walk away alive. "I have read your terms," Torrhen said. "Freedom of worship, local law, no slaves permitted upon northern soil. You ask only taxes and swords when called. And your eldest son to foster at my court," Aegon added. "Hostage is a hard word. I say, guest. He will learn dragon lore. He will ride if he has the gift." Torrhen's gray eyes weighed promises. "I march to die if needed. But I will not sentence my people to glass and bone if life may be had with honor." He bent the knee there in the hush of dawn. The kneel heard round the world. 7 kingdoms were won. Years passed. Aegon raised the Red Keep atop Aegon's Hill, its galleries hung with woven tapestries of Valyria and Westeros entwined. He forged councils, a hand to speak for Westerosi, a triune of flames, Visenya, Rhaenys, and himself, to balance east and west. He freed the small folk of the Riverlands from ironborn reavers. He brokered rights for Rhoynar fisherfolk in Dorne, though sun spear princes still bristled. In Valyria, news arrived like embers on the wind. The conclave had denounced him outlaw, yet merchants whispered of his kingdom's riches. Silks and spices flowed east from ports newly opened. Scribes sent back tomes of Westerosi legends that fascinated dragonlords grown bored of their own. Soon delegations came, first curious, then covetous. Araxes himself voyaged on the Skydrake, a floating palace borne on wyvern wings. He anchored off Dragonstone, summoned Aegon aboard. Father and son regarded one another across an obsidian table. Araxes looked older, weary, but pride shone. "This crown you forged," he said, "shimmers brightly enough to blind the conclave. They mutter now that perhaps the Covenant stifled us." Aegon sipped wine. "I did what duty demanded. Treasures flow home. Some lords claim we should finish what you began. Fold your Westeros back into the Empire." Aegon's gaze hardened. "Westeros is not a colony. It is my realm. 6 parts by conquest, 1 by accord. Would you tear it from me?" Araxes sighed. "I have no wish for war between blood. What I ask, return to Valyria for coronation as Triarch of the West. Remain my heir. The Empire becomes yours entire, in time. Dandar, and Westeros an obedient province. A jewel in the diadem." Aegon stood. "I will attend a summit of equals, Valyria and Westeros allied. But I will not see my throne diminished." Father and son held silence edged like steel. At last Araxes nodded. "Then let us speak of alliance, not absorption." Thus was born the twin draconic crown. 2 capitals, 2 courts, 1 empire renewed. Valyria retained its ancient splendors. King's Landing, rechristened Dragon's Landing, blossomed with canals and marble roads. Scholars crossed seas. Septons debated pyromancers. Northmen taught Valyrians the craft of working ice into myth-glass blades. Aegon's dream of synthesis took breath. But perfection is forged in fire and tempered in blood. Far to the east, in the ashen wastes of the Shadowlands, sorcerers watched dragons twine across twin skies. They whispered of balance upset, a fire too bright. In secret forges they brewed obsidian plague, a smoke that could fell winged gods. Navies black sailed toward the narrow sea under moonless nights. The war of 2 flames ignited without warning. At Wood's Way, a cloud of dark ravens descended upon Dragonstone, carrying shards of cursed dragonglass that burst into choking ashes. Hundreds died. At Valyria, a skyark exploded mid-flight, raining bodies like burning sleet. The Empire reeled. Aegon flew Vagar across the world's spine. hunting shadow fleets. Visenya commanded the Wardrake Legion, storming enemy covens. Rhaenys rode at the head of refugee columns, healing with songs and wildfire poultices. Years burned. Cities smoldered. At last, upon the red dunes of Korth, Aegon faced the sorcerer king Khor. Obsidian comets streaked overhead. Karhul wielded a staff of petrified heartbeat. Vhagar bellowed fury. Steel, spell, and scream forged dusk. Aegon struck the killing blow, though blind in one eye from black flame. The war ended not with surrender, but exhaustion. In victory smoke, Aegon gathered his people on the jade steps of Qarth and spoke. This empire built upon fire survived because we let new rivers flow into old seas. The day we cease mingling, we cease living. He decreed the covenant reborn, not as stranglehold but as charter of exploration. Every decade, fleets would sail beyond horizon. Dragon riders would map the blank corners. Knowledge, not dominion, became coin of prestige. Valyria accepted, chastened by scars. A generation grew that saw dragons not as gauntlets, but as bridges. Half a century later, Aegon the Unifier sat upon the silver glass throne in Dragon's Landing. Beard streaked with white, grandchildren darting underfoot. A maester from Old Town presented a new map. Unknown continents appeared sun-kissed and inviting. Aegon felt the old hunger stir. Visenya, steel still in her spine, read his eyes. You would fly again, brother. Not for conquest. He rested a hand upon the map. For wonder. Rhaenys' laughter rippled, gentle as ever. Wonder is a flame that never dies. So long as we feed it. Aegon rose. Through arched windows, he beheld a city where Westerosi and Valyrian children chased each other beneath lavender banners. In the distance, Vhagar, ancient yet unbowed, stretched wings over the bay, teaching fledgling dragons to soar. The doom had never come, but Aegon's longing had birthed a different cataclysm, a world unbound by the complacent perfection of its masters. Empires might endure or crumble, but the hunger for horizons would ever drive men, and dragons, into the unknown. He smiled, feeling in his bones the exquisite ache of endless dawns. Come, he said to his sisters, to his heirs, to any soul within earshot. The world begins anew each time we dare to imagine it. And with that promise echoing like dragon song across sky and sea, Aegon Targaryen stepped into the future he had forged, one unmeasured by thrones or flames, but by the boundless, eternal breath of possibility. K.N.D. Pow. The wind smelled of cedar resin and distant snow, as dawn leaked across the battlements of Dragon's Landing. From the viewing gallery above the moon garden, Valyria Targaryen watched the city breathe itself awake. Crimson Dragon, proud ferries poling upriver, temple bells chiming, smoke from hearth fires twisting like silver ribbons into the pale sky. 17 years old, with hair that shimmered red gold in the right light, she had Rhaenys' gentleness in her smile, and Visenya's steel in her shoulders. The blood of old Valyria burned bright in her veins, though she had never once walked those marbled streets. Today, at last, she would. Behind her, the glass doors slid open on oiled hinges. Lord Brandon Stark. Snow cloak slung across broad shoulders, entered, boots soft on the Hightower marble. A gust stirred the white wolf embroidered on his mantle. He was 3 years Ellyra's elder, handsome in the unadorned northern way, and carried long claw with the casual ease of an heir born to burden. The fleet is ready, he said, voice deep as winter's soil. High tide in 2 hours. Ellyra nodded without turning. Have you seen grandfather? Down at the piers, inspecting ballast, haggling with dockmasters, scolding any sailor who dares to stow rotten oranges. The king is 69, but I swear he works the junior hands harder than the boatswains. Ben? She smiled. He says the sea cares nothing for crowns, only for diligence. Brandon leaned his elbows on the balustrade beside her. Far below, gulls harassed a vendor rolling carts of sweet breads. Are you certain you wish to fly, not sail? Valix frets in her muse. She has not stretched her wings over salt water in months. Her flames will spook the fleet. Only until she sings. Valyria's eyes shone. When she sings, even iron forgets to rust. Brandon laughed, shaking his head. Stark words cannot match Targaryen poetry. They can, she said softly, when the Stark wields Valyrian steel. Color warmed his cheeks. For a breath, the bustle of the city receded, leaving only the hush of sunrise and the hammering of two young hearts. But duty intruded as always, a distant roar, half thunder, half challenge. Alex. Valyria straightened. I must go. Brandon reached to catch her wrist. Return safe, my princess. She squeezed his fingers. You too, my lord. Then she was gone, ghosting along the colonnade, scarlet cloak snapping behind her like a dragon's tongue. The Grand Harbor, once a muddy inlet, now teemed with high-masted leviathans plated in hammered copper. 3-decked carracks from Lannisport rode at anchor beside slim Irish brigs. Turtleshell coracles from Ibn bobbed between. At the main quay, the flagship Blood of the 14 Flames towered. Black hull, crimson sails sewn with slingstone diamonds that flashed in sunlight. Upon the prow, a carved dragon crouched, mouth agape, eyes set with twin rubies the size of apples. Aegon the Unifier stalked the gangplank, silver hair whipped wild by the dawn wind. Age had grooved his face and taken one eye, but what remained burned brighter than many men's first vigor. He wore no crown, only a dragon-scale jerkin the color of pewter, and a weather-stained cloak fastened with a plain obsidian clasp. Trim another quarter-ton from the ballast. He barked at Master Thadeo, the Volantine harbor engineer. She rides too low. Thadeo bowed. At once, your grace. Aegon turned as Visenya descended the pier steps, austere as ever in smoke-gray plate, dark sister sheathed at her hip. Rhaenys followed. Shawl of sea-green lace over her shoulders, humming a lullaby from days long vanished. The girl prepares to fly, Visenya announced. Aegon grunted. Good. I want her above us when we breach Valyrian skies. A drake's shadow will remind every doubter whose blood commands this voyage. Rhaenys laid a hand on his arm. They do not doubt, beloved. They wonder. He snorted. Wonder is kin to fear. Fear kept us alive once, Visenya said. It need not divide us now. Nearby, Orys Baratheon, gray-streaked, one hand resting on the pommel of Stormbreaker, oversaw the mustering of 400 Stormlander crossbowmen. His youngest son Daemon wrestled tackle lines with grizzled boatswains, eager as a mastiff. On the far jetty, brass horns trumpeted as the Arak of Qohor arrived, smoke-black sails rigid with wind. From her decks poured a company of unsullied and polished pewter, shields emblazoned with entwined dragons. Valyria's gift in honor of the fleet's first return since the War of Two Flames. Aegon surveyed the throng. Westerosi bannermen, Free Cities merchants, Rhoynar fisher captains, even Carthene spice lords in rainbow sashes, all gathered beneath the symbols of the twin crown. It pleased him, though he would never say it aloud, to witness dream made flesh. Visenya followed his gaze. Too many threads in one tapestry invite snags. Then let us weave carefully. Beyond the city walls, Valak's unfurled wings the color of dusk-lit rubies, and vaulted skyward, Valyria strapped tight behind the neck spines. Scales shimmered like burning jewels. Below, common folk cheered. Some fell to knees, others raised infants in offering. Dragons had become familiar in the south, yet each sighting renewed awe as fierce as first thunder. Valyria felt Valak's pulse thrum through saddle leather. Bonded since hatching, they moved as one thought. She steered with subtle shifts of hip and heel, guiding the drake into a wide gyre above the departing fleet. Sails blossomed below like a garden of embers. Gulls scattered. She inhaled, air crisp, salt-etched, spiced with coal smoke from 1,000 chimneys. To the west, the horizon bled rose gold. Somewhere beyond, the narrow sea widened into promise, and past that, Valyria. Not the fabled marbled utopia of old sagas, but a living place battered by war and reborn by peace. A squadron of blue and white airy frigates cut ahead of the flagship, keels slicing waves like silver swords. From their quarterdecks, errand bowmen loosed flight after flight of cloth-tasseled arrows, each arrow trailing ribbons of color, sky blue, frost white, painting the air in delicate arcs of allegiance. Valyria angled Valix lower. The frigate sails billowed dangerously close to the dragon's downdraft, but the captains held firm, trusting the prince's granddaughter to know her beast's temper. She rewarded them with a dazzling barrel roll, sunlight blinking off the ridges of her armor. The sailors whooped wild approval. From the flagship's foredeck, Aegon shaded his good eye, tracking his granddaughter's serpentine dance. Rhaenys, standing beside, reached for his hand. "Think you she will love Valyria?" "She will judge it," he answered. "As she judges everything. She could be happy there. She could be happy anywhere dragons fly." Rhaenys's gaze drifted to the azure skylanes. Be kind, old pride. Her world began here, not there. Let her see with her own eyes. "I intend to," he said gruffly, squeezing her fingers. "I intend for all of them to see beyond ancient marble." 9 days of fair wind carried the fleet east, hugging the breaker's current. Evenings brimmed with music, Dornish lutes twining with Pentashi horns, the deep drums of Ibn keeping measure. On the 10th dawn a squall burst sudden and savage. Waves rose like black fortresses, masts groaned, lightning spidered across boiling cloud. The blood of the 14 flames lost her main topsail in a screaming gust. Valyria patrolled the storm in Valix's embrace, the dragon carving air between thunderbolts. At her shouted commands, rogue fireship crews doused oil stores. Rhoynar water mages calmed whitecaps with whispered spells. Deck mages from the citadel conjured shields over fractured spars. 2 galleys still foundered, beams splintering under mountain-high seas. Brandon Stark led a lifeline party across planks lashed between pitching decks. Salt spray iced his beard, rope burned hands raw. Twice he was flung into froth and twice hauled back by Northmen chanting the winter litany. On the second rescue, he lifted a Myrish baby from a shattered cradle, cradling the wailing bundle beneath his jerkin as rain stabbed like nails. Watching from above, Valyria felt fear bite, fear not for herself, but for the man whose laugh warmed quiet corners of her heart. She longed to swoop, to pluck him up in dragon talons, yet she knew dragons and storm-tossed rigging mixed like wildfire and silk. She had to trust his mortal sinew. When the gale at last relented, only 1 galley had sunk, 20 souls lost to black water. The fleet paused to carve driftwood runes and scatter bright petals in remembrance. Rhaenys sang a hymn older than any septums, her voice tremulous, rain-washed, beautiful. That night, Valyria found Brandon near the prow, arm in a sling, knuckles scabbed. She laid a hand on his shoulder, fingers light. "You tempt the stranger," she whispered. "He was busy elsewhere," Brandon said, nodding toward the quiet, endless sea. "Besides, I could not let the babe drown." "You are mad." "Madness is kin to courage." His blue eyes sought hers in the lantern glow. "Will the princess sail safer if I cower below?" She laughed, sudden and bright, then sobered. "My dragon could have saved them faster." "Perhaps. But men must stand for men, else dragons rule alone." She studied him, then tilted her face. Together they watched phosphorescent wakes bleed off the hull, silent sparks in black velvet. Words unspoken trembled between them, as fragile as salt glass. By the 14th day, the fleet crested the horizon where once, in tales grim and grand, the seas boiled red and the sky wept ash. Yet no doom waited now, only island spires etched against turquoise water, smoke-plumed volcanoes drowsing beneath summer haze. White gulls wheeled above tiled domes, pastel sails drifted in sun-sparked bays. Even so, Aegon felt his heart pound like battle drums. In youth, he had fled these shores in fire and thunder. He returned a king of distant realms. Pride soured to tension, a knot drawn tight by decades of politics, war, and uneasy peace. Atop the command castle, the Valyrian triarchs waited, Archon Araxes, still wiry, though time etched deep lines about his mouth, flanked by Maria Bellaries, in opalescent robes, and Havros Coheres of the Twilight Forges, shoulders draped in molten iron lace. Behind them stood an honor guard of winged lancers, dragon-bone helms gleaming blue-gray like stormglass. The blood of the 14 flames eased into the harbor under sweeps of banners, horns calling down from terraced avenues. Dockmasters directed the fleet into berths carved from coral-pink stone. As soon as the gangplank thudded onto Valyrian wharf, heat seeped up, subtle, volcanic, fragrant with sulfur and spice. Aegon disembarked first, flanked by Visenya and Rhaenys. Orys, Brandon, and delegations of Westerosi lords followed. A hush rippled across the docks, thousands of native citizens pressing close. Ivory-skinned day laborers, noble matrons in shimmering capes, smith apprentices stained cobalt by drake flame forges. They stared at the strangers as though glimpsing ghosts returned from fable. Araxes descended the marble stair. For one heartbeat, father and son regarded each other. Two mirror shards of the same unbroken glass, jagged where it met the light. "Welcome home, my child," Araxes intoned. "I come as king of Westeros, not wayward son," Aegon answered. Yet his voice lacked old defiance. Grief rode beneath like a reef. Araxes gestured to Ellyra aloft on Valix, whose circling shadow spilled across the wharf. "And is that your heir? A granddaughter who wields fire as keen as steel? Then let her descend and let us dine." Aegon inclined his head. Up in the sky, Ellyra guided Valix into a spiraling dive, landing atop a quartz-studded perch that resonated with the dragon's roar. Dockworkers cowered. Children squealed in delight. Ellyra vaulted down, bowing low before the triarchs as protocol demanded. Yet her gaze flicked over Valyria's famed panoramic grandeur. 7 terraces of obsidian, turquoise canals arcing between steam vents, temples crowned with living flame. Awe flared in her purple eyes. Araxes saw and smiled. The city welcomes new eyes. May they see farther than ours. For 3 days celebration blurred into negotiation. Banquets sprawled beneath glass domes where starlight illusions drifted like diaphanous constellations. Poets recited sagas carved in flame letters across the air. Dragonlords competed in aerial games, hurling obsidian javelins through hoops of magma light. Amidst the revelry, Aegon and the Triarchs convened in hot stone chambers to draft what histories would name the Pact of Two Horizons, a charter binding Valyria and Westeros, not by tribute, but by shared voyages of discovery every 3rd year, compulsory exchange of scholars and healers, and co-custody of a new dragon hatchery on the uninhabited isle of Rhaella Midway across the narrow sea. Yet not all feasted. In the smoky tavern labyrinth below the street of singing anvils, seditious whispers curdled. Aleri Celtigar, a minor scion whose family lost patent privileges after the War of Two Flames, stoked discontent among disenfranchised guild mages, promising restoration if they could shatter the Westerosi alliance. They brewed a weapon, void glass daggers etched with negative glyphs, black mirror runes that unraveled dragon wards. On the eve of the charter's signing, a conclave of conspirators crept through ventilation arteries into the hatchery of sacred embers, where 43 dragons nested, including hatchlings of Valix and steadier Merax's clutches. Their intent: slaughter the young to drive a wedge of grief into the heart of reconciliation. But dragons dream like gods, and hatchlings are not without guardians. Nyrax, a 6-month-old crimson drake, sensed the foreign pulse of hate. His shriek awakened Valix roosting farther up the crater. Flame and Fang answered intrusion. The would-be assassins loosed their void-glass daggers. 3 struck true. 2 hatchlings died thrashing in blue-green embers. A 3rd wound spiraled open in Nyrax's flank. He roared flame bright as midsummer noon. Valix's descending fury incinerated half the raiders, but Aleri Celtigar evaded by rolling beneath a lava-run trough. He hurled one last dagger at Valix's exposed wing joint. The obsidian shard sank deep. Dragonfire faltered, turning to choking smoke. Ellyra jolted awake across the city. heart fused to her dragon's pain. She sprinted barefoot through colonnades, Brandon Stark at her heels. Guards fell in behind. They reached the hatchery as Valix lurched, blood sizzling where it met molten runnel. Valyria vaulted onto her wounded drake, pressed palms over the quivering flesh, whispering Valyrian comfort. Brandon blocked the doorway, long claw drawn, facing the last conspirators retreating along gantries. Alares loosed a dagger. Brandon knocked it aside and charged. Steel rang. Sparks hissed. At sword's end the Celtigar air spat curses of ancient lineage, but Brandon's northern blade found the space beneath his breastplate. Alares fell, bleeding black, void glass cracking in his fist. Aegon and Araxes arrived moments later amid a whirlwind of guards. They took in the scene: body of a traitor, wounded dragon, hatchlings howling. Valyria's tears streaked soot down her cheeks as she knelt beside Nyrax, who struggled in mortal agony. "He suffers," Visenya said, voice like flint. Valyria lifted blood-slick hands. "Help me." Rhaenys knelt opposite, laying gentle fingertips upon cooling scales. She began to hum, a low, cyclical drone older than Valyrian roadstones. It was the song of renewal, a healing cantus forgotten by most since the line of Gaemon the Gentle. Flames stirred along Nyrax's wound, knitting sinew. Araxes blinked. "I thought that song lost." Rhaenys did not open her eyes. "I never forget a lullaby." The fledgling stabilized, breath steadying. Valix's own wound required a master healer, but she would fly again. Aegon turned to his father. "This is what old resentments breed." Araxes sighed. "Then let tonight prove we choose life, not fear." The signing of the pact took place beneath the largest dome of the Sapphire Forum, walls alive with rippling illusions of ships gliding across unknown seas. Aegon, Araxes, and Mira Belaeres scribed their names in molten gold upon a living crystal tablet. When the final flourish cooled, the tablet sang, a rising tone like dawn over a new world, then fused itself into the dais for all to witness. Speeches followed. Aegon spoke of horizons ever receding, of dragons as bridges not weapons, of unity stronger than stone. Araxes spoke of lessons burnished by time, of greatness reborn through humility, of children surpassing their sires. Mira praised the blend of blood and thought, the mingling of forge heat and winter frost. Yet the hall held one last revelation. At Visenya's signal, a curtain dissolved to reveal a half-scale model of a vessel never before conceived. Long of keel, low of draught, its ribs of weirwood overlaid with enchanted bronze, twin masts adaptable for canvas or silk ballooning wings. Mounted amidships, a cradle of obsidian harness designed to bear a dragon in rest while catching high-altitude currents. Visenya addressed the assembly. "Behold the Dawnwing, first of the dragon caravel line. She can cross any ocean in half the usual time, sail with or without drake companion, and carry scholars into latitudes where map lines fade." "Menano." A murmur of wonder rippled outward. Valyria stepped forward, cheeks still smudged with ash. "With leave of king and triarch, I pledge Valix to the Dawnwing's maiden voyage, west of the Sunset Sea, where no Valyrian nor Westerosi flag yet flies." Gasps erupted. Brandon Stark strode beside her, cloak of direwolf fur rippling. "And I, Lord Brandon of House Stark, pledge northern swords in my own service. Let us chart the currents beyond nightfall." "No." Aegon's one eye glittered. He thought of his own youthful hunger, of how he had once stolen 3 dragons and sailed west to conquer. Now grandchildren volunteered to sail beyond conquest toward knowledge. Pride, fierce and unadulterated, swelled inside his scarred ribcage. Araxes nodded slow approval. So, the wheel turns. Preparations consumed the next moon. Shipwrights from Tall Tree Town joined Valyrian enchanters, fusing wood and bronze with liquid gemstone. Rhaenys oversaw the provisioning of seed libraries, crates of barley, amaranth, and dusk roses that could take root in new soils. Visenya drilled crews in emergency dragon handling procedures. Orys delegated Stormbreaker to his eldest, and took command of the fleet escort, though he complained he was too old for Uncown wars against whales. The night before departure, Valyria slipped from her quarters and climbed the spiral of silent fires to the pinnacle balcony, where obsidian braziers burned azure despite wind. She found Brandon already there, leaning on the parapet, hair silvered by starlight. He smiled. "Your dragon snores." "She dreams," Valyria replied, joining him. Below, the harbor shimmered like liquid glass, each anchored ship a jewel set in black velvet. "Tomorrow," Brandon murmured, "we sail where maps end. Are you frightened?" "Yes." She grinned. "Which is how I know it matters." He turned, brushing loose hair from her brow. "My father told me courage is not absence of fear, but the choice to stand lively beside it." "And your choice?" "To stand beside you." Moonlight painted his face. Her breath hitched. She rose on toes, kissed him. Salt, warmth, starlight folding together. When they parted, her pulse ran wild as a hatchling on first flight. She whispered, "If we do not return." "We will," he vowed. "But if we do not, the world will remember we tried." The dawn wing slid from dry dock at dawn, banners snapping white gold. Valix crouched in her mid-cradle, wings partially furled, eyes reflecting endless blue. Valyria stood at the helm platform beside Maester Sorellos, who navigated by crystal spheres attuned to dream-steel compasses. Brandon commanded the foredeck with Captain Mila Chorus, a one-armed Carthene woman whose remaining hand could tie a reef knot blindfolded. Crowds lined every terrace, cheering as the dragon caravel glided past. Aegon and Araxes watched side by side from the Firestone Bastion, Valyria nearby like a carved gargoyle, Rhaenys singing quiet prayers. At the last moment, Aegon lifted both arms in benediction. A hush rolled shore to shore. "Fly far," he called, voice carrying on wind, "and send home the dawn." Valyria raised her arm in salute. Valix trumpeted, flame corkscrewing skyward. Sails caught the newborn breeze. The dawn wing pivoted west, bowsprit slicing calm water. Escort ships fell into diamond formation, hulls parting seas once cursed, but now claimed for hope. As the city dwindled, Valyria exhaled. Valyria's marbled splendor blurred into cloud-streaked memory. Ahead stretched only the great emptiness of the sunset sea, an expanse where, legend said, the sun drowned nightly, and stars were born from its dying embers. She glanced at Brandon. He met her eyes, steady and bright. "For tomorrow," he said. "For every tomorrow," she answered. Weeks flowed into months upon that boundless blue. Trade winds carried them beyond the summer sea lanes, past the lonely light of Old Wick, into latitudes no sailor's logbook named. Storms harried, kraken surfaced, tentacles the girth of tower columns, waterspouts spun like glass pillars. Yet the dragon caravel endured, her bronze-bound keel flexing like sinew, her dragon lending lift in dead calms. Scholars recorded cloud shapes unknown in eastward skies. Maesters sketched feathered whales breaching, their songs resonating through hull planks. Rhoynar herbalists harvested floating kelp forests and brewed medicines that cured blood rot overnight. Northmen speared fish that glowed sapphire at dusk and tasted of almond and rain. Still, the horizon receded. Supplies dwindled. Morale frayed. Tiny fractures appeared in Valix's harness. Bronze welds squealed at each wave impact. One starless night, the sea fell mirror still. No wind, no swell. Only infinite black reflecting infinite black. The crew whispered of the Black Mirror, a haunted stretch where lost souls lured sailors into sulking depths. Lanterns cast small halos. Valyria paced the deck. "We need wind or dragon flight." Sorellos consulted orreries. Magnetic currents are null. Dragon lift would strain the harness beyond safe tension. Brandon joined her by the rail. "We could attempt oars. Oars would take months. Better months than drifting until we drink lamp oil." A chilling moan rose from the deep. All froze as a ghostly glow pulsed beneath the hull, vast and languid. Lights birthed shapes, palaces of coral, avenues lined by pearl pillars, tremulous silhouettes of titanic beings gliding between. Rhaenys, summoned from her cabin, peered over. The ocean's children, she whispered, a folk myth of pre-Valyrian days. They weave currents when wind fails. As if hearing, the shapes turned. Luminous eyes, soft, curious, regarded the wooden intruder. A tendril of light swam up, brushing the Dawnwing's keel. The ship quivered, but no harm came. Instead, a gentle push nudged the bowline. Another followed. Ripples spread as unseen leviathans shepherded the dragon caravel westward. Singing in frequencies felt more than heard. The crew stood spellbound. Even Valix lowered her head, thrumming a low, peaceful chord. Within hours a whisper wind wakened. Sails bellied. The ocean's children sank back into darkness, glow fading until black regained its dominion. But the Dawnwing now rode a new current, swift and true. Days later, gulls reappeared. The air tasted of loam and orchids. Peaks rose on the horizon, emerald daggers piercing morning mist. Land, dot. Excitement crackled from masthead to rudder. Charts unfurled, compasses swung. A sheltered cove unveiled itself. Crescent beach of lavender sand, waterfalls spilling from jungle cliffs. Monkeys with azure fur chattered in canopy shadows. Giant flowers opened like gold shields. Anchors dropped. Longboats splashed. Valyria led the first landing party, Brandon beside, Valix circling overhead. They stepped onto sand untrammeled by human footstep in living memory. She knelt, scooping a handful. The grains glittered violet and silver. Remember this moment. She whispered. Brandon planted the staff of the direwolf standard. New hope on new soil. Over following weeks, they mapped river deltas, catalogued fauna, feather-scaled lizards with melodious cries, trees whose sap hardened into amber faster than honey. They discovered ruins, vine-draped ziggurats etched in spirals reminiscent of ancient Valyrian spirographs but subtly different, pre-Doom perhaps, or another branch of the dragonkin diaspora. Within one half-collapsed vault, they found a mosaic showing dragons soaring not above men, but beside them. Partners, equals, guardians of orchards and children. Rhaenys wept to see it. This is the dream we chase, pictured long before. Valyria traced tile lines. We are not alone in wanting harmony. Visenya, ever pragmatic, studied the stonework. These ruins are centuries deserted. Harmony does not shield against drought or plague or war. None. Then harmony must learn to fight, Valyria replied. While survey teams delved inland, shipwrights repaired harness welds. Maester Sorellos calibrated sextants beneath alien constellations. Oris oversaw fortification of a supply depot. Dragon glass palisades, signal pyres, cisterns lined with fused stone. On the 23rd day, scouts returned breathless. 10 leagues inland they had found eggs, dragon eggs, within a geothermal cavern. Shells shimmered like starlit onyx, pulse faint but audible. Valyria rushed to inspect. The cavern glowed with bioluminescent moss. Steam vented through cracks, warming the clutch. She counted 6 eggs, each larger than a helm. Brandon asked, "Wild dragons?" "No scorch marks outside the cave," Valyria mused. "Perhaps their brood mother perished." She placed both palms against one shell. Warmth radiated. A flicker of consciousness brushed her mind. Sleepy, tentative. Not Valyrian, but kin to kin. Visenya urged caution. "We know nothing of their breed or temperament. But we have time to learn." Over months, a settlement grew. Tented libraries, smelters forging jungle ore, gardens seeded with Westerosi barley. They named the place Dawnfall, where night's edge gave birth to day. Valyria and Brandon spent evenings atop a cliff watching twin sunsets, one star sinking crimson behind islands, another smaller sunlet, part of some celestial quirk, dipping gold beneath opposite horizon hours later. At such times they planned futures, dragon sanctuaries, academies translating Valyrian glyphs into Old Tongue, trade networks bridging oceans. Yet challenges thrive. Jungle fevers struck. Rhaenys brewed remedies but lost 3 sailors. Stormquakes shook cliffs. Orys' fortifications held, though a watchtower slid into surf. In the cavern 2 eggs cracked early, releasing wyvern-like creatures unable to harness flame. They died within days. Knowledge demanded sacrifice. One night, a piercing cry woke the camp. From the hatchery cave soared a newborn dragon, wings limned in luminous teal, fleeing inland. Valyria mounted Valix in pursuit, Brandon following on a sure-footed sand stallion. They traced the fledgling to a plateau where geysers erupted beneath moonlight. The young drake, barely the size of a horse, trembled near a pool. Its cries wove terror and loneliness. Valyria approached slowly, offering calm hums. Valix crouched behind, a mountain of protective strength. Remembering Bran's lesson, Valyria unbuckled her sword and set it aside. No threat, only welcome. The fledgling cocked its head, pupils dilating. She extended a hand. It sniffed, then nudged with a warm, damp snout. Connection bloomed, not bonding like rider and dragon, but empathy bridging fear. She realized this breed communicated more through light than sound. Patterns shimmered across its throat, echoing her heartbeat. She mirrored by moving lantern glass, reflecting pulses of luminosity. Slowly, trust deepened. Brandon watched, awestruck. He whispered, "You teach without word or fire. Dragons listen when humans speak gently." They coaxed the hatchling back, creating a separate enclosure with crystal prisms to ease its light talk. Over weeks it thrived, teaching them patterns: hunger, play, gratitude. They named him Lyora, after a Valyrian word for first dawn. Rhaenys posited that these dragons evolved alongside the ocean's children, adapted to bioluminescent ecologies, explaining their gentler temperament. Valyria remained skeptical but impressed. Knowledge made weapons sharper. After a year, holds brimmed with specimens, charts, and living wonders. The Dawnwing, hull weathered but sound, prepared for a return crossing. Some urged colonization of Dawnfall. Others argued for rotating garrisons. A council of captains decided, leave 40 volunteers to hold the settlement, with Orys' second son, Demon, as governor. Dispatch 2 ships east with findings. Maintain signal pyres to guide follow-up expeditions. Valyria felt torn. Part of her belonged to this newborn world, yet duty called to carry its story home. Rhaenys soothed her. A promise kept once is easier kept again. You will return. Then? The day before departure, Brandon walked with Valyria along the lavender beach, water foaming around their ankles. He produced a slender ring, Valyrian steel braided with Dawnfall sapphire. In Westeros, he said, we pledge with weirwood sap. In Valyria with dragonfire. Here, I pledge with both. Valyria's breath caught. You honor me. I love you. Tears? Or salt spray? She could not tell. She slipped the ring on, marveling at the mingled metals. Then she kissed him under sky spangled with unknown constellations, and neither of them cared that the world kept turning. The return crossing proved swifter, currents familiar, sails tight. Yet danger crept. Taut. 2 nights from dawnfall, lookout horns blared. Shadow shapes glided to starboard. Sleek hulls cloaked in kelp netting. Sails died midnight. Raiders? No. No. These vessels bore no oars, no rigging. They moved like sharks, silent, slicing water unnaturally. Valyria ordered battle stations. Crossbowmen lined gunwales. Valix snarled, flame gouting warning. From the nearest shadow ship rose a figure in iridescent armor, helm shaped like a nautilus. A voice carried, feminine, every syllable resonant. Peace, skyburners. We come at your call of light. Puzzled glances darted. Rhaenys stepped forward. Who speaks? The tide shapers of the drowned aurora. We saw your dragon dance and followed the glow. The vessel approached. Its hull seemed carved from mother of pearl, seamless. Deck lights revealed tall beings, human-shaped, but luminescent veins traced under translucent skin. They looked akin to the ocean's children glimpsed beneath waves, yet walking above. The envoy laid a crystalline sphere upon the water. It floated, radiating a soft hum. Images blossomed. Dawnfall's beach, the mosaic of partnership, Valyria soothing Lyra. A gentle query pulsed through all minds. Why bring fire to fragile shores? Lyra stepped onto the rail, unarmed. To learn, not to own. The envoy inclined her helm. Images shifted to the hatchery's graves, the lost wyverns. Learning costs life. What gift balances the trade? Lyra removed her ring, dropped it into the sphere. Images of her love with Brandon, her bond with Valix, her promise to return shimmered. We gift ourselves, our histories, our hearts, our service as guardians. Silence stretched. Then the sphere brightened, dissolved, releasing the ring which floated back to her palm. Accepted. Share breath, share tide. The shadow ships peeled away, merging with sea mist, as if satisfied guardians had been named. Visenya exhaled. We depart carrying vows to unknown powers. May they remember mercy. They will, Rhaenys whispered. If we remember respect. Months later, sails of red and black pierced the morning fog off Dragon's Landing. Bells pealed. Ravens darted. The city erupted in welcome. Aegon and Araxes stood upon the pier as the Dawnwind docked. Valyria and Brandon first down the gangplank. Lyra perched on Valyria's shoulder glowing soft teal. Children squealed in delight. Aegon embraced his granddaughter, voice cracked. The dawn you promised. Home to share. She replied, pressing into his hands a carved sea glass tablet, encoded with maps, languages, seeds of accord. Crowds gasped at Lyra's luminescent patterns, spelling simple greetings across air. Arax's eyes filled with tears unseen in decades. Brandon knelt, offering the ring. With your blessing, I wed Lyra. Visenya barked a laugh. Bind wolf and dragon? The realm will never sleep again. But her smile belied any protest. Aegon raised them both. Then let a new chapter begin, born of flame, frost, and twilight sea. Years flowed. The pact of two horizons bloomed. Fleets bridged cultures, dragons escorted scholars. Children learned 3 tongues before winter solstice. At dawnfall, Daemon's settlement grew into radiant Dawnspire. Tide shapers visited, teaching coral architecture. Westerosi smiths shared steel forging. The hatchery's surviving eggs hatched diverse drakes. Some flame, some light, some water-bound, forming the first tri-breath flight. Old hatreds did not vanish. They were tamed by common purpose. When plague struck Lannisport, Valyrian healers crossed seas with tide-shaper remedies. When Mount Veshak in Valyria threatened eruption, Northmen miners tunneled vents to relieve pressure. On a windless spring, the silver glass throne passed from Aegon's worn hands to Valyria and Brandon, crowned as day-dawn monarchs beneath twin banners. The dragon rampant entwined with direwolf rampant, set upon a field of shimmering teal. They pledged to reign not over land, but over dreams. Visenya retired to the silent Forge Isles, crafting dawnsteel blades whose edges hummed songs of tides. Rhaenys became matron of the hatchery, guiding bond rights between dragons and children of every blood. Araxes died at peace watching sunrise paint the 14 flames lavender. His last words, "Horizons, my love, always horizons." The Dawnwing sailed again and again, each voyage returning with wonders. Fruit that tasted of starlight, stones that sang when struck, an alphabet etched by clouds. In time, the very maps changed. Edges faded, center shifted. The world grew wide as the longing inside every curious heart. And somewhere, beyond the furthest swell, the ocean's children sang of skyburners who carried dawn between their wings. A song caught by summer wind, drifting forever toward yet unimagined shores. Ah. E1. Ah. A network error occurred. Please check your connection and try again. If this issue persists, please contact us through our help center at help@openai.com. Mist-veiled dawn poured lilac light over Dragon's Landing, splashing the alabaster towers and the river's broad mirror with hues soft as a lullaby. From the highest terrace of the Red Keep, Queen Valyria stood cloaked in an airy mantle of dusk-red silk, watching banners stir along the city's walls. The sigil, direwolf and dragon interlaced in a single circular knot, floated above every gatehouse. It fluttered even on the fishing skiffs nosing into the harbor. Its shape burned into sweetbread crusts in the bakeries, sung by street urchins skipping stones across the black water. Only 5 years had passed since her coronation, yet in quiet moments, she felt the realm's pulse in her own veins as keenly as Valik's heartbeat in flight. Her dragon slumbered on the volcanic ledge half a league away, curled on a bed of pumice. She kept her wings close during these spring nights, content to dream while her rider shouldered waking burdens. Valyria often slipped out alone to greet sunrise. Solitude steadied her, especially when the weight of 2 worlds, Valyria's marble inheritance and Westeros' restless wilderness, pressed so firmly on her shoulders that she feared her name might shatter. This morning, though, she was not alone for long. Footsteps approached soft as cat's paws, accompanied by the hushed jingle of a sword belt. Brandon emerged from the rose quartz archway, hair still damp from dawn training, frost-blue cloak tossed over a cotton shirt unlaced at the throat. He smelled of soap and cold steel, and the pepper tea northern retainers brewed for him at sunrise. His presence stabilized the air, as though all winds had remembered their true course. "You left an empty bed," he murmured, brushing a lock of silver-gold hair from her cheek. "I left it for sunrise," she said. "The sun will not delay because a queen chooses to lie in." Brandon chuckled, folded his arms along the battlement. "Sir Roderick bested me twice in the yard, so I suspect even kings are allowed no sloth." "Sir Roderick's back aches every evening," she teased. "He told me the secret to besting you is to win before stiffness sets in." A playful shove shifted her, but Brandon's hand lingered on the small of her back. They watched gulls dive for silver-scaled sprats in the royal pond far below. Silence rippled between them before Brandon spoke again. "The small council meets within the hour. Maester Sorellos rides hard from Old Town. He claims the Archmaesters have proof that the strange wavelights around the Lonely Light match those we recorded beyond Dawnfall." Valyria's heartbeat quickened. If Sorellos is right, the current that carried us all the way west may encircle the globe. We could reach Yeti by sailing sunset instead of sunrise. Her gaze flooded with possibility. Imagine a full circumnavigation. One voyage that links Dawnfall, Valyria, Westeros, and the Jade Sea in a single loop. Brandon's smile curved. "And imagine how many lords will howl at the coin it costs. Banker Linthar of the Iron Bank waits in the council chamber already, counting interest on walls we have not yet built." She sighed. "Diplomacy first, dreams second. Come, husband, let us face the howling together." Bow. They descended through halls alive with sunrise gems, stained glass windows painted courtiers in mosaics of ruby, emerald, and topaz light. The guard bowed, resplendent in dawn steel breastplates that shimmered between Valyrian smoke gray and northern icicle silver. In the small council circular chamber, a dozen figures rose as their monarchs arrived. On one side, Lord Loras Hightower, taller than any candelabra, drafted port tariffs, meant to coax Korth into ratifying the pact's trade clause. Next to him, Lady Nymeria Dane of Starfall, emissary of Dorne, drummed lacquered nails on the marble. Her people were fractious again, salt traders in the Broken Arm complaining about Valyrian lighthouse dues. Across the table, Linthar of Bravos shuffled ledgers like a priest fingering prayer beads. Beside him stood Maester Sorellos, face flushed, travel dust still clinging to lavender robes. Valyria seated herself. Brandon followed. Sorelos launched into a controlled torrent. Scholars in the Isle of Ravens, he explained, had charted anomalies in oceanic resonance, song lines that matched harmonic signatures recorded by Ranez's field notebooks in Dawnfall. 3 such veins of humming current converged on the Lonely Light archipelago, spiraling south across the Sunset Sea, curling beneath the world, to re-emerge in the jade expanse near Leng. If harnessed, these currents could have traveled time between hemispheres. Nymeria raised a brow. Bold speculation, Maester. My ancestors learned not to trust the sea's promises. Linthar sniffed. Speculation demands coin. The Iron Bank does not invest in fantasies of singing water. Then, Brandon held up a palm. It was fantasy that brought dragons across the narrow sea, and fantasy that built the Canal of Silverhold, linking Valyria's east and west harbors. We are living proof that dreams bear fruit when fed. Linthar's gray eyes narrowed. Dreams bear debt. Valyria leaned forward. Then let us pledge collateral. The Prism Archives of Dragon's Landing, valued 10,000 gold stags, and half the spice duties from the next 3 Dawnfall convoys. In exchange, the bank funds the construction of 2 Wave Rider hulls, each fitted with Tideshaper rudder stones and Myrish pump screws. We sail one westward, one eastward. First to circle the world reaps charter rights to the global corridor. Nay! Murmurs swept the chamber. Loras Hightower whistled low. Lady Nymeria's violet eyes sparkled with amused respect. Linthar tapped a parchment. The numbers align with risk. The bank accepts, provided Valyria cosigns. Nandansia. Valyria nodded toward the lone Valyrian delegate. High Master Havros Koharis, Smith Lord of the Twilight Forges, whose braids were threaded with copper and jet. He rose, bowed brusquely. Valyria will cosign. The Song of 2 Horizons must become the Song of all horizons. At that, the contract was sealed. Wax sigils pressed, dusted with dragonglass powder that shimmered when binding magic took. Later, as the council dispersed, Sorelos remained behind, fidgeting. My queen, he said, there is more. The Archmaesters translated weather rune tablets found near Dawnfall's inland steppe pyramids. One passage warns of a sleeper below the horizon, a celestial phenomenon that drowses centuries, then stirs to drown the coasts in silver blood. The glyph matches the luminescent tide patterns around the Lonely Light. Then? Valyria's blood chilled at the phrase silver blood. Dawnfall's shore had once bled opalescent foam under certain moons, a mystery they never solved. Brandon rubbed a thumb across his jaw. Do these tablets give timing? Star charts engraved on a twin obelisk appear to predict a conjunction, not of planets, but of lunar nodes, occurring at the next black moon, 7 months hence. Valyria felt a tug of dread, and curiosity deeper still. Send copies to the Citadel, Valyria's Crystal Collegium, and Dawnfall's Tideshaper Council, and prepare the Wave Riders sooner. If a threat rises from the deep, we must meet it far from harbor. 7 months galloped past like wildfire on summer grass. 2 sleek vessels launched at midsummer, the Sea Bridge, captained by Lady Nymeria Dane, bound west, and the Valyrian-built Star Spiral, commanded by Lord Loras Hightowers, nephew Sir Aemon. Both carried crews of Westerosi, Valyrians, Rhoynar, and Tideshapers. Valix escorted them beyond the stepstones, then wheeled back to guard the capital. While the ships vanished into horizon haze, Valyria and Brandon rode north to Winterfell, answering Lord Rickon Stark's call to witness the relics recently dredged from shivering sea ice. Ice amber shards containing frozen sea serpents with translucent wings. Maester Anara, a Doe researcher from the Dawnfall Institute, believed the serpents might be larval forms of Lyora's luminescent kin, preserved millennia before the Long Night. Their discovery hinted that Dawnfall's dragons once spanned polar tunnels connecting oceans. Within Winterfell's ancient crypt, Valyria studied a crystal-cased specimen. Light from weirwood torches refracted through the ice amber, painting the serpent's ridged wings in rainbows. Rickon, tall as Brandon now, spoke softly. When we break these shards on hot coals, the ice sublimates, but the serpent liquefies to silver vapor and vanishes. Silver blood, Valyria murmured, stomach knotting it. Perhaps the ancients feared such serpents melting en masse, drowning coasts in luminous tides. Brandon exhaled. If those serpents sail the unseen currents today, the coming conjunction might thaw them on a colossal scale. Valyria touched the coffin's frigid lid. Then we must plug the tunnel at its source. Rickon folded arms. Grand Maester Valyria thinks the tunnel mouths lie beneath the lonely light archipelago, but no one has charted them. Brandon steadied his brother's shoulder. Nymeria Dane sails there now. We'll send ravens requesting deeper surveys. Yet ravens never reached Nymeria. Each dispatch returned, talons gripping shredded parchment. Storms rake the western sky so fiercely that even dragons shied from the black squalls. When the moon turned silver sliver thin, Sea Bridge's beacon crystal cracked. Its echo in Dragon's Landing guttered like a dying candle. The star spiral circling east reported no contact either, though her dragon-glass scry mirrors showed flashes of bioluminescent aurora sweeping the sea's skin. The black moon rose, invisible but heavy, pulling tides until harbors emptied at low ebb and refilled threefold with towering surges. Fishing villages along the Shield Islands washed away. The lighthouse of Farwind Isle reported ghost ships adrift, hulls plated in iridescent scales, crewed by no one living. At night, villagers heard songs thrumming through their bones, deep, mournful, hypnotic. One dawn, a mist bank rolled into Dragon's Landing, glittering with particles of silver dust. Where the dust settled, moss sprouted in minutes, then died, leaving slick film. Maester Sorellos tested it in the alchemy tower. Heat turned the residue to writhing motes that coalesced into serpent shapes before evaporating. Valyria convened an emergency council. Valyrian mage knights traced ward circles along harbor walls. Tide shapers summoned standing waves to push the mist seaward. Yet still, the ululating grew. On the seventh night of the black moon, the lonely light beacon flared crimson, then went dark. Columns of ghost-green radiance climbed the western sky, twisting like dragonfire reflected in obsidian. Valyx, restless, shrieked warnings from her perch. Valyria donned dragonsteel armor, Brandon likewise. "We cannot sit behind stone and hope," she told the council. "We ride Valyx west. We find Nymeria. We seal whatever rift births this silver blood." No. Many objected. The realm could not lose both monarchs. But they answered as one. This threat spoke to why they wore crowns at all. Leave other lords to hold walls. The dragon and the wolf would fight at the horizon. At dawn they launched, Valyx bearing Valyria. Wings scorching sunrise. Lyra, now horse-sized, flying with Brandon in a cradle harness. 3 lesser dragons from Rainey's flight, weaving behind. A vanguard of storm gulls charmed to shuttle messages. The voyage met monstrous seas. Swells reared like glass mountains, crests snapping into argent spray. Beneath, shapes writhed, serpentine shoals blanketing fathoms. Their song vibrated hulls of escort triremes until planks split. Dowel here. Dragons strafed flame across water, cauterizing breaches of silver foam. 3 days out, flotsam appeared. Shards of pearlwood hull, torn sails bearing the sun and spears of Nymeria Dane. A broken mast clung to a tide-shaper runestone, its glyph flickering weak pulses. Nymeria's voice echoed through. Found chasm. Cannot close. Serpents unending. If you hear this, break the moon's mirror. The glyph died. Rage tightened Valyria's chest. Brandon laid a gauntleted hand on her thigh. Hold conviction, not despair. They pressed on until a horizon of cyclonic mist loomed, rotating counter to all winds. Lightning forked inwards, not outwards. In the maelstrom's eye hovered a disk of water flat as polished obsidian, reflecting no stars, only darkness. This was the mirror of the sleeper. Serpents, thousands, poured upward in spirals, singing a harmonized dirge. Their forms shifted between liquid and vapor, never fully solid. When dragon flames struck, they exploded into silver rain that sank only to rise again. Valix banked hard. Lyora darted through serpent plumes, her light patterns flickering frantic distress. Brandon concentrated, trying to speak through shared luminescence. "Friend, guardian," Close Gate repeated. Lyra realized. Lyora's kin, the ocean's children, once governed this threshold. They sang it shut in ages past. Without them the hinge remained ajar. She yelled against the storm, "We need the Tideshaper chorus." Brandon pointed westward. Amid breakers, a battered hull crawled. The Sea Bridge's lifeboat. On its prow, Nymeria Dane clutched a broken conch horn rune. Behind her, 8 Tideshapers knelt in circles, weaving water sigils that sputtered like dying embers. Their voices strained thin. Lyra swooped low. Valix bellowed encouragement. Nymeria met her eyes across waves. "Our song is too frail," she cried. "We need a dragon heart to carry resonance." Lyra understood. Dragon hearts were alchemic crucibles of fire and blood magic. Their beats resonated through basalt and bone. She guided Valix over the lifeboat, hovered, and sliced a shallow gouge along her mount's breast scale. A gout of golden red blood hit the sea, steaming. Valix roared, not in pain, but offering. The Tideshapers dipped fingers into the torrent, shaping runes of blood and salt. Their chant swelled. For a heartbeat, silver serpents stuttered midair. But it was not enough. The sleeper's mirror widened, drawing in the moon's faint gleam until the sea glowed argent. Brandon steered Lyora beside. The young dragon vibrated with purest teal light. Brandon dismounted onto Valix's back, clasped Lyra's hands. Wind ripped their cloaks. "We need fire and light," he said, voice raw. "Lyora must dive into that rift and ignite a back surge. But she is too small alone." Lyra looked into Valix's wise molten eyes. "Valix can carry the furnace while Lyora threads the song." Brandon tightened jaw. "Oh, why? If the gate collapses on them?" Hope's blade cut both ways. Yet without action, whole realms would drown in silver tide. They shared a silent farewell with their dragons, the kind that includes every memory of sky dancing. Then they acted. Valix wheeled upward, wings drumming thunder. Lyora shot ahead, tail weaving luminous runes. Below, Tideshapers timed their chant to each radiant loop. When Valix reached the zenith, she folded wings and plunged, a comet of ruby lightning, straight into the mirror. Lyora mirrorshaft dove through the dragon's slipstream, her body blooming strobe patterns that translated chant into pressure waves. The surface shattered like black crystal. A geyser of boiling seawater erupted sky-high. Brandon seized Lyra as backlash hurled them onto the lifeboat deck. Steam and silver rain hammered sails. Serpents shrieked, their bodies losing coherence, unraveling into incandescent threads that the Tideshaper runes knotted and drew slowly back below. Nymeria screamed triumph into storm. "They're twisting the currents, closing the hinge." But the mirror fought. Every pulse of closure squeezed energy outward. Lightning smote the lifeboat's mast. Currents ripped anchors from escort hulls. From the chasm's edge Valix burst free, wings ragged, flame guttering. Lyora's glow flickered sporadic. Lyra's heart plummeted, then soared as she saw them rise in tandem, battered but alive. Blue-white arches of energy stitched the chasm's rim, sealing segments like molten glass cooling. With a final thunderclap, the opening cinched shut. Sea and sky stilled. Silver residue spiraled downward, resolving into harmless planktonic glitters. Silence spread, broken only by the hiss of Valix landing, water cascading from scales. Lyora collapsed onto the deck beside the queen, her light pulses slow but steady. Brandon cradled the dragon's head, tears rinsed by rain. Lyra slid from Valix's saddle, legs trembling. She laid palms against her dragon's scorched breast. "You are heart of sunrise," she whispered. Valix exhaled a soft plume, content. Nymeria knelt amid Tideshapers, voice hoarse. The gate sleeps once more, thanks to blood and light. But gates dream, my queen. They will seek to open in other ages. Then other ages will have guardians, Valyria answered. We will teach them. For weeks, they shepherded crippled ships home. Westeros greeted its monarchs with hysteria and gratitude. Storms abated, beaches cleansed of silver film, fishermen hauling nets heavy with safe catch again. Valyria lit beacon fires for 3 nights, celebrating the dragons that healed a wound older than the doom. In Dragon's Landing Starfall Court, Valyria proclaimed the Order of the Horizon Wardens, a standing fellowship of tide shapers, dragon riders, scholars and sailors, sworn to monitor songlines and defend against any sleeper stirrings. Admission honored skill, not birth. Its foundation scroll bore the bloodprints of Valix and Lyora, forever glowing faint red and teal. Years spun onward. Children in both realms learned new charts, etching the currents the wardens mapped. Trade caravels looped the globe, bringing Yi-Tish silk, dyed with dawnfall flower pigments, Bravosi glass etched with polar constellations, iced wines fermented beneath shivering seabergs. The Iron Bank made fortunes, and then lent them back to fund public libraries afloat on river barges. Rhaenys passed peacefully in her garden roost, a chorus of hatchlings crooning lullabies she once sang. Visenya supervised the forging of the first Horizon blade, a rune-edged dawnsteel greatsword gifted to Nymeria Dane, who became warden commander of the Sleeper Patrol, sailing ever on Seabridge rebuilt. One mild autumn, Brandon and Elira stood atop Dawnfall's Dawnspire, where crystal parapets refracted sunset into ribbons that danced among vine-draped colonnades. Below, Lyora, now titan-sized and mother to a clutch of bioluminescent eggs, taught hatchlings to weave light patterns across the lagoon, thrilling squealing children from 100 cultures. Elira rested a hand on her swollen belly. Their first child stirred. Brandon kissed her brow. A world of edges we have walked. But see how the edges blur into meeting places now. May our child inherit horizons wider still, she said. Night fell. Sky blossomed with stars uncounted to old Valyrian or Westerosi charts, new constellations discovered on Wave Rider journeys. They glittered like promises. Brandon pointed. There, the Dragon's Bridge. And there, the Wolf's Lantern, Elira replied, tracing their joined sigil among the heavens. Together they watched as meteors streaked, bright as serpent silver yet harmless, crumbling into fireworks of hope. Behind them, bells chimed for evening prayer, no longer to one god or many, but to the boundless road ahead, to the breath-linking sea mist and dragon flame, to the simple stubborn faith that so long as hearts dared, the world would answer with wonder. And so the song carried on, verse upon verse, across ages where names faded to myth, but deeds flared eternal, of a queen and a king who challenged complacent perfection, of dragons who lent fire to close wounds and forge paths, of people who found kinship in difference, and of children who never looked to the horizon without believing they, too, might cross it toward a dawn of their own making. Might cross it toward a dawn. Okay. Oh. Summer thunder echoed among Dawnfall's emerald ridges, the rumble rolling inland like the footfalls of some gentle giant roused from sleep. On the highest terrace of Dawnspire, Princess Elenia, firstborn to Queen Elira and King Brandon, stood beneath a gauze pavilion, silver-gold hair damp against her neck, taking in the smell of rain and sap and distant sea spray. She had just turned 12, though already she wore the lean length of a girl outtracing childhood. Long limbs, clear lilac eyes, a mind that devoured every chart and chronicle her tutors placed before her. Below, far beneath the crystal balustrade, the lagoon shimmered with soft blue fire. Bioluminescent swirls drifted like galaxy arms, cast by the brood of Lyora, now matron of a subspecies half-called starlight dragons by the scholars. Night after night, they traced mathematical spirals across the water, so precise that maesters copied them onto star vault ceilings, believing the patterns concealed some cosmic theorem. Elenia thought them beautiful, but tonight her interest lay farther west, out beyond the reef where twin moons cast double highways across black glass. A storm had birthed itself at dusk, crawling from the far horizon in bruised violet and pewter. It tracked the very path Seabridge should have followed home from her latest patrol. The last beacon stone they'd lit before vanishing whispered only one phrase into Dawnspire's mirrors: bearing witness. No one knew what that meant. King Brandon, roused from his council chamber, had gone at once to the Eyrie and flown north on Cirrus, Lyora's eldest son whose wings spanned half a tourney field. Valyria remained in the tower, commanding horizon wardens to every lighthouse between Dawnfall and Valyria. Elenia had eavesdropped on the strategy brief until Lady Nymeria Dane shooed her off with a harried kiss to the forehead. Your eyes are meant for constellations, little starborn. Not for worry. But worry clung harder than salt. And so Elenia slipped up here, climbed the spiral of singing crystal steps until wind tugged her braid loose. Lightning forked behind the deluge wall. For an instant, she saw silhouettes, great hulls lifted and brought low, caught between roiling water and sky. Were they Seabridge's escorts, fighting through breakers? Or something stranger? In school, she had memorized every design of Horizon Warden vessel, the shallow draft skiffs of the Tide Shapers, the Dawn Steel caravels, even the new Voidwing catamarans, whose sails harnessed dragonglass filament. What she glimpsed now looked broader, swollen, more like a floating plateau than a ship. She blinked, and the shape melted back into shadow. A smaller thunder rolled behind her, Lyora's clawed feet gripping the terrace causeway. The immense dragon bowed her luminous head, eyes shifting cerulean in concern. "I'm not hiding," Elenia said as the heat of scaled breath warmed her cheeks. "But I had to see." Lyora unfolded one wing over the girl as a windbreak. Beneath that azured canopy, the air smelled of sweet ozone and hearth smoke, comforting and grand. Light rippled along the wing's translucent veins. The dragon hummed, steady, sorrow-lilted. Elenia pressed a palm to warm hide. "Father will return." She tried to believe it. From below the terrace, some commotion rose, boots clacking on stone, breathless voices. "Highness, by your leave," called Captain Sir Vale Keith, commander of Dawnspire's Sky Guard. His breastplate gleamed in the wing light. "The Queen asks your presence in the watch hall." Elenia brushed rain from her brow. "Lead on." She cast one final look across the Black Sea, then followed the captain downward, Lyora pacing overhead along a parallel vault. The watch hall resembled a lantern-lit observatory. Panes of storm glass allowed panoptic views, while inlays of Tide Shaper crystal amplified distant beacon chirrups. Queen Valyria stood among a half-circle of advisors: Visenya, older but still sword-straight; Maester Sorellos, hair grayer yet eyes keen; Nymeria Dane, wearing salt-spattered leathers as though she'd ridden the squall herself. When Elenia entered, Elira's stern mask softened. "Little star." She traced a sigil across her daughter's brow. "Old Valyrian for calm seas. You should be abed." Elenia's chin lifted. "Father is out there." Visenya snorted. "So are 20 seasoned wardens and 3 dragons. What help is a child?" "Every eye seeing truth helps," Nymeria murmured. She laid a scroll on the table. "We received this from the prism mirror 5 breaths past. Seabridge's final log buoy, ejected before the squall swallowed them. It drifted east on the undercurrent." Valyria unrolled the waterproof vellum. Ink shimmered faint as moon milk. The words were Nymerian shorthand, but the gist chilled everyone. Sighted flotilla of drifting slab ships. No oars, no masts, propelled by radiant vents along underside. Crews appear to be inert. Some fused to decks by Corylus exoskeleton. Instruments detect faint psychic resonance, identical to sleeper serpents, yet frequency slower, deeper. Slab ships travel with current at 4 knots, inexorable. Destination vector: Dawnfall Reef. We attempt to deter, but craft ignores flame and wave. Preparing boarding with Tide Shaper relay. Log buoy deployed. Bearing witness. Warden Commander Nymeria Dane taught. Elenia felt her stomach drop as if a trapdoor opened. If they reach the reef, the lagoon, the hatchery, the whole settlement stands vulnerable. Sorellos finished. Slab ships may carry larvae or worse. Valyria tapped a finger on the table. Where's the first of them now? Trajectory places lead vessel at 30 leagues, Nymeria said. They ride the thermal river, fast. Visenia's gauntlet creaked as she clenched a fist on Dark Sister's pommel. We must shatter them before they ground. Stone might conceal spellwork, Sorellos cautioned. Explode them too near, you disperse contagion. What of song? Asked Elenia, surprising herself. All eyes turned. She swallowed, continued. When Lyora and Grandmother Rainey's mended Nyrax, they used song to knit life. Could an anti-harmonic unravel what binds the slab ships? Sorellos blinked, then paled with sudden inspiration. Opposition resonance. Yes. The larval serpent frequency is F minor root of the old tide scale. If we invert waveform, he snapped fingers. But we would require a dragon chorus anchored by tide shapers, and a central modulator of immense crystalline gain. Valyria met her daughter's gaze. The Dawnheart spire. That spire, erected only 2 years earlier, rose above the lagoon like a shard of clear dawnstone. Inside, a chamber tuned to planetary harmonics amplified research into weather prediction. They had not tested it as a weapon. Visenya assessed. We have Lyora, Cirrus, and Pyrewing. A chorus of 3 might suffice. Elenia flushed with courage. 4. Valix. At the name, even seasoned wardens paused. The ancient dragon rarely left her restful perch now, but her fire remained legend. She will heed my call, Valyria said quietly. But we must hurry. Bring her saddle. Dem? Enpo. Night thickened when Valix launched from the eyrie, scarlet wings lit by lagoon torches below. Beside her soared Lyora gleaming teal, Cirrus silver gray, Pyrewing ember orange. On Valix's back rode Elira and Elenia. Brandon had not returned, yet his void crystal signet still glowed on the wrist mirror, proof of life. Tide shapers lined the Dawnheart's base, palms on amber tuning pillars. Within the spire's resonant gallery, Sorellos manipulated floating runes, aligning them to each dragon's pulse. When the slab ships enter range, he cautioned, focus on the G-sharp harmonic and think of cleansing flame turned inward. Elenia felt Valix's ancient breath rumble through her spine. The dragon's thoughts brushed hers. Images of sleeping volcanoes, of hatchlings curling safe under wings. Protection. Resolve. Mist parted on horizon. Dark bulks appeared, colossal barges of bleached calcite, their edges dripping seawater that glowed sickly white. Wind carried low, cavernous moans, as though the ships themselves sighed. Along each flank yawed vents exuding cold light. Deck silhouettes revealed motionless forms, shapes once human but sheathed in coral husk. A warden's horn sounded. Dragons answered with roars that shook rain from clouds. Tide shapers raised conch staves. The spire pulsed indigo, then violet. The first slab ship crossed the reef line. Reefstone hissed where contact met, as though acid etched it. Valyria shouted the Valyrian cadence. Visenya echoed on Pyrewing Nymeria from the four-wall rampart. The dragons inhaled, then exhaled. No flame this time, but sound, layered thunder notes woven into piercing melody. Lyora's light patterns synchronized, painting air with flickering sigils. The Dawnheart caught the chord, amplified it, hurled invisible ripples across the lagoon. Water flattened, then bulged in concentric rings. The lead slab ship shuddered, pale vents flared turquoise. A wail rose from fused corpses. Cracks raced across deck. With a brittle groan, the craft fractured stem to stern, releasing jets of silver vapor that twisted skyward, then collapsed inward on themselves, torn apart by counter-resonance. The second and third ships buckled, their coral sheaths sloughed off like scabs. Fused sailors crumbled to ash before touching water. But the fourth vessel fought back, vents brightened to blinding pearl. From its flank soared serpents of semi-solid mist, coalescing mid-air into drake-long leviathans that whipped toward toward the dawn heart. Valyria dove, dark sister drawn, but steel met vapor. Her dragon's fire seared nothing. Lyora darted to intercept, luminous throat flashing warnings. Her song disrupted the serpents briefly, but they re-knit. Elenia clutched saddle straps. Valix growled. The ancient dragon banked and ascended. Higher. Higher until clouds engulfed them. Thunder boomed around, but Valix ignored, climbing to a height where air tasted thin as stars. Through windrush, Elenia sensed intention. She means to dive like before, into the mirror's memory, she gasped. Elira tightened arm about her daughter. Hold faith. Then Valix folded wings. Gravity seized them, clouds blurred, wind howled. At terminal speed, seconds from impact with the serpent mass, the dragon opened her furnace. A cone of magenta-white fire, older than any forge. But this time the fire carried harmony. Elenia felt it. A chord shaped inside her ribs, matching G-sharp yet climbing half an octave, piercing. Flame met mist leviathan. The song collapsed molecular bonds. Vapor screamed, shattered into glitter. The slab ship itself imploded as beams of dragonfire lanced through hull and into the silver reservoirs within. Water geysered. Shock waves rippled. Dragons reeled but recovered. Tide shapers steadied the spire with walls of countercurrent. When spray settled, nothing remained of invading craft, save shards dissolving into harmless plankton. The lagoon glowed only with Lyora's brood once more. Silence. Then cheers erupted from every parapet. Elenia hugged her mother, tears mixed with rain. Valix circled once, descended to Dawnheart's platform, exhausted but triumphant. Yet triumph dimmed when Brandon's beacon stone finally brightened on the mirror. Dim, flickering. The signal indicated he survived, but coordinates placed him far beyond the reef. Aboard Seabridge's last intact launch, adrift with 2 wardens and 1 injured dragon fledgling, trying to mend storm-shattered rigging. Resupply ships lay days away. Elenia stood before the mirror rune as glyphs decoded. It would be reckless to dispatch a full vessel through lingering currents, but a fast flight might reach him. If flown by someone small, unburdened, on a dragon nimble enough to thread dying squalls. She turned to Lyora. The dragon's eyes already mirrored resolve. I can ride, Elenia said. Elira opened her mouth, to refuse, to protect, then paused. She saw in her daughter the same hunger that once led her own feet beyond the Blackwater, the same luminous quiet that stilled serpents tonight. A future queen needed proving. A father needed saving. Valyria whispered, let the fledgling fly. Moments later, Elenia, wearing storm leather too large in the sleeves, mounted Lyora's scaled neck. The dragon crouched, wings quivering. Elira clasped her daughter's hand once, placed Brandon's spare direwolf sigil against her heart. The sky remembers its children, she murmured. Return with dawn. Lyora leapt, teal comet arcing east into storm's ragged tail, bearing a girl not quite grown, pursuing a horizon widened tonight by courage and harmonies, and the certain ineffable knowledge that the Song of Worlds waited always for new voices. In the hush after departure, Queen Elira pressed fingers to lips. Somewhere below, hatchlings chirped at the dawnstone spire. Above, clouds parted just enough to reveal a sliver of waxing moon, no longer black, rimmed with soft gold, promise of calmer tides. Elira whispered to the dark, to the sea, to every horizon. I will keep the fire. She will bring the light. And the night, sated for now, folded its wings around dawnfall, singing in undertones of starlit water as the realm breathed hope like the tide, steady and unbreaking, awaiting the returning wings of daughter and father together.